And now Sloan and I are joined in the studio by Courier sports editor and analyst Paul Williams to take us through the fall sports season.
Hello and welcome back to Fisher Sports Desk. For this segment, I'm joined by Paul Williams, the sports editor of the Cardinal Courier. Thanks for being with us, Paul.
Thanks for having me.
And we're just going to go over some fall sports from last year, this year, sort of took a look at behind and also a look ahead since it's the very beginning of the season.
Exactly.
Right now, let's look at football.
Okay.
Last year, the team finished 7-4. This year, the team is already 2-1. What are your sort of first impressions of the Cardinals?
Well, you look on paper, I mean, their offense should be explosive. I mean, obviously you have Tim Bailey back. You got offensive line who the coaches are really excited about. In fact, Vosberg said it's one of the best offensive line he thinks they're going to ever have. You got wide receivers. Obviously, they got to replace Tim Marion, Jimmy Smith. But other than that, I mean, they look really loaded in offense, and also with the defense, got a few starters back. Andy Episcopo especially. Really excited to see what he can do this year.
Andy Episcopo, by the way, is number 33 in the nation in tackles. He also happens to be number 33, and he has 33 tackles so far. Just a coincidence, of course. But you mentioned the defense, Paul. I was a little bit worried about it so far. They're losing Josh Gottlieb, a couple of other players. It seems like they are a little bit inexperienced. What do you think of that?
Especially in the secondary. I mean, losing someone like Kenny Bostic, you know, they got some holes to fill. But so far, so good. Obviously, Mount Union, it's a different level. It's a different kind of game. But Buffalo State, U of R, they've had a good showing.
And I feel like we haven't really seen everything the Cardinals have to offer. As you said, we saw them play Mount Union, which is obviously a much formidable opponent. Then we saw Buff State, which was pretty much the opposite. And then we saw a really close game against U of R. What did you think about that game and their performance there?
U of R was a confusing game because first half they were a little rusty. They came out strong. Special teams kind of carried them in the first half, and they pulled away. And of course, Bailey with that ankle injury has been hobbled a little bit. They took him out, thought it was safe, and they started turning the ball over. They hadn't turned the ball over all year, even against Mount Union, against Buffalo State. Then that last quarter, they just started turning the ball over like crazy. But with the University of Rochester game, I think it shows the kind of potential they do have, especially in that third quarter. The third quarter was really key for them.
Okay, now let's move on to men's soccer. Last year, this team went 5-9-3, not the best of seasons. And this year, they're only 3-3-1. And this is a team that still has All-American Luke Lennox. What have they been looking like so far?
You know, the soccer team, they've had a really tough schedule, especially early on. They play, you know, all these teams in the top 20. Hobart, especially, a number 4 team in the country, and they lost 0-2. But again, you have other teams that they play, and they've had good showings, like you mentioned. Lennox Lewis is carrying him on offense. Andrew McIntosh is having a great year last year and this year so far on the defensive side. I think that they should compete for the Empire 8 this year. They were picked 3rd, I believe, but they should compete with Stevens and all those kind of teams, yeah.
Now moving on to women's soccer, last year this team was 6-10-2. This year they are 2-5-1. This is a team that lost an all-conference player in Kelly Zepatella, but they still do have Megan G, Mary Doherty, Sarah Beal, and of course the goalie Ashley Martin. Where do you see their season going? They're not doing very well so far.
Well, those 4, like you mentioned, have been carrying them so far. Megan G especially, I think she has 5 goals so far. She's been going really well on offense. You know, they beat RIT. That was a really good thing for them. First conference game, they just lost their next one. But hopefully they can compete for one of those top 4 spots in the Empire 8 and then see what happens from there.
And then also for women's volleyball, this year the team is doing pretty well at 6-8. Last year they went 22-13, and really this team is all about the tandem of Cindy Candifer and Elena Braun. Yeah,
and they've been hampered by injuries so far, especially with Candifer. You know, last year was a banner year for them with those guys, and also with Lisa Ziabrowski that they lost. That was a big key. I think if they can get healthy though and get together in this Empire 8 crossover game, they should be good. They have 4 Empire 8 crossover games coming up, and if they have a good show in there, then they should be in good position to compete for the Empire 8 championship.
I think their preseason schedule also helped them a lot. They played a lot of out-of-conference opponents, and I think that got them a lot of experience nationally, so when they come to conference games, they'll be a lot stronger. Now let's move on to women's tennis, doing one of the best teams this fall. Right now they're 4-3. The tandem of Laura Hale and Elena Vall is just dominating the competition.
Honestly, that's the team that surprised me the most this year. I mean, so far, women's tennis has come out with a bang. Elena Val, especially, she's undefeated in singles play. She's lost one match in doubles. I mean, she's absolutely tearing it up right now. Her and Laura Hale are just owning right now, especially in the doubles. They have a really, really good top three with Vale, with Barlow, and with Laura Hale. So, you know, they're set. They should compete for Empire 8 again this year, which is something they haven't been able to say in a while. It's kind of exciting to watch.
Well, it's funny because this team was also picked to finish 5th in the preseason, and I think they're really going out to show that that was a really inaccurate ranking.
Yeah, even with Stevens is always one of the best women's tennis teams, and they hung with them like 100%. It wasn't a blowout by any imagination. They could have won all those matches, and so I mean they're in good position. They're doing well.
Definitely. Yeah. And last but not least for the fall sports schedule, let's talk a little bit about golf. On the women's side, we have Alex Battle, who finished first in one of her tournaments. I believe it was the St. Lawrence Invitational, above all the rest of the competition, and they've been playing very well so far. Yeah,
it's a second-year program. Talking to Coach Sims, he wants to see that improvement. Last year, you know, honestly, they were in last a lot of times, but with the first-year program, you know, he wants to see that improvement, especially with the St. Lawrence one. They were last year, and this year they beat a couple teams. So he wants to see that improvement. He wants to see them be able to recruit more. And with Alex Battle and also Shannon Nolan, they look to be good for the future. And also even this year, I mean, they're starting to compete a lot better, especially for a second-year program.
Now on the men's side, we have a couple of good players too. Like Kohler and a couple other ones, they have been placing very high as well as a team, whereas the women's team seems to be very good individually. The men's team does very well in team events.
Yeah, the men's team has won 7 of the last 9 Empire 8 championships. You know, they've got a really strong program. Brady Yates especially, he finished first in the Empire 8 first half they did. They split the Empire 8 tournament, first half in the fall, second half in the spring. And Brady Yates led him in that one. But I think they should win another one. I mean, it's almost consistent now. Like, it's another year, another Empire Championship for men's golf.
All right, Paul, thank you for joining us here on the show today. It was a pleasure to have you. We'll definitely have you on more coming up this entire year. And make sure to pick up an issue of the Courier on stands.